Wrestling games are usually pretty straightforward, or at least that's the intention. They aim to deliver an immersive experience, letting players recreate the in-ring action move for move. While promotions like WWE, WCW, TNA, and AEW have accomplished this with either a realistic or more stylized approach. Like the WWE 2K series, some games have taken a much more unconventional path. Some wrestling games have cranked up the cartoonish style to the extreme, turning sports entertainment into something almost super heroic. Others have gone even further, abandoning wrestling entirely and morphing into something completely different. With that in mind, here are 10 of the strangest attempts at reinventing the genre.
Professional wrestling is my life!
10. Hulk Hogan's main event. On paper, a motion-controlled wrestling game seemed like a fantastic idea, especially with Hulk Hogan's name front and center. But in reality, the final product ended up being one of the most unresponsive and poorly executed wrestling games ever made. Despite its colorful visuals, arcade-style presentation, create-a-wrestler mode, training options, and career mode, Hulk Hogan's main event was completely undermined by clunky controls, dreadful gameplay, and terrible voice implementation. Fortunately, developer Panic Button took this failure as a learning experience, later redeeming itself with critically acclaimed and far more responsive titles like Doom for the Nintendo Switch. 9. WWF Betrayal. One of the strangest wrestling games ever, WWF Betrayal took a beat-em-up approach, adapting the infamous 1999 storyline where Stephanie McMahon was kidnapped. Players could choose from 4 top superstars: The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Undertaker, or Triple H, and brawl their way through various levels to rescue Stephanie and earn a WWE Championship opportunity from Vince McMahon. An incredibly unconventional WWE title, Betrayal stood out for its bizarre premise and Double Dragon-style gameplay, making it something of a guilty pleasure for fans. It also holds the distinction of being the last WWE game released on the Game Boy Color. 8. The Simpsons Wrestling. With wrestling still booming in 2001, a Simpsons-themed grappling game seemed like a surefire hit. Featuring 20 playable characters, classic Springfield locations, the original voice cast, and a solid soundtrack, The Simpsons Wrestling had all the ingredients for success, if only for the sheer novelty of seeing Ned Flanders square off against Kang and Kodos. Unfortunately, it was anything but a winner. Fans and critics alike tore it apart for its awful graphics, clunky gameplay, and the shocking lack of actual wrestling. While there have been plenty of great Simpsons games over the years, this one sits firmly at the bottom of the pile. 7. WWE All-Stars. A stark contrast to the simulation-heavy SmackDown and WWE 2K series, WWE All-Stars took a wild, over-the-top approach, pitting WWE legends against the biggest stars of the time in an arcade-style brawler. While the concept alone could have worked as a standard wrestling game, THQ chose to take things in a completely different direction. With its cartoonish visuals and ridiculously exaggerated moves, All-Stars let Shawn Michaels send The Undertaker soaring 20 feet in the air with sweet chin music. But beyond the spectacle, the game delivered solid gameplay, plenty of DLC, and an awesome fantasy warfare mode. 14 years after its release, WWE All-Stars remains both utterly bizarre and incredibly fun. 6. WWE 2K Battlegrounds. As wild as WWE All-Stars was, WWE 2K Battlegrounds took things even further. Following the disastrous launch of WWE 2K20, WWE wisely hit pause on the main series to regroup. While they worked on 2K22, they filled the gap with another exaggerated, cartoonish wrestling game. Like All-Stars, Battlegrounds was flashy, over the top, and could be fun in short bursts. However, unlike its predecessor, it didn't feel like a bold, creative experiment. Instead, it came across more as a quick-fix detour, a stopgap to get WWE games back on track. Games Def Jam Vendetta. The idea of real-life rap artists like DMX, Method Man, Scarface, and Joe Budden stepping into a wrestling ring is undeniably bizarre. Yet, Def Jam Vendetta turned that strange concept into a major success, thanks to a fantastic grappling system inspired by WWF No Mercy and an engaging story mode. Whether players were taking on the ruthless D-Mob, voiced by Christopher Judge, and his crew of rappers turned wrestlers, vying for the affections of Angel, Christina Milian, or just enjoying chaotic multiplayer action with friends, Def Jam Vendetta exceeded expectations. Its 2004 sequel, Def Jam Fight for NY, shifted away from traditional wrestling and embraced a mix of fighting styles, but the original remains a cult classic. 4. Backyard Wrestling. 2. There Goes the Neighborhood. Building on the chaos of the first backyard wrestling game, There Goes the Neighborhood cranked things up even further with an absolutely wild roster. It featured wrestlers from ECW, CZW, and TNA, alongside real-life musicians and even adult film stars. And this time, the mayhem wasn't just limited to backyards. Players could brawl in mini golf courses, offices, and even amusement parks. Adding to the madness, the game's career mode was packed with satire and dark humor. However, while the original received mixed reviews, There Goes the Neighborhood was slammed by critics. The negative reception ultimately brought the Backyard Wrestling series to an abrupt end. 3. Backyard Wrestling. Don't try this at home. The first Backyard Wrestling game fully embraced the chaos of the real-life phenomenon, turning it into an ultra-violent wrestling experience. The roster was just as wild, featuring the Insane Clown Posse, Jamie Madrox, Sabu, Tylene Buck, aka Major Guns, along with indie wrestlers, rappers, adult stars, and original characters. If that wasn't enough, Don't Try This at Home also introduced the bizarre talk show mode. This mode parodied the Jerry Springer Show with the host of Today's Topic, interviewing the various victims and participants of backyard wrestling between matches. The game also had an array of difficulty levels, including normal, hard, and wait for it, porn star. 2. WWE Crush Hour. If WWF Betrayal skipped traditional wrestling in favor of a straight-up beat-em-up, then WWE Crush Hour went even further by abandoning wrestling entirely for vehicular combat. Drawing heavy inspiration from Twisted Metal, the game's story revolves around Vince McMahon taking control of every television network on the planet and launching his latest free-for-all on WWE programming. Featuring a roster of WWE superstars and commentary by good old JR, Crush Hour turned into a massive demolition derby. A somewhat low-budget release, the game received mixed reviews and didn't fare as well as either the Twisted Metal series or the SmackDown games in terms of sales. However, it remains an oddball favorite and has since gained a cult following. 1. Rumble Roses. Arguably the strangest wrestling game ever, Rumble Roses featured a raunchy, all-female roster of scantily clad wrestlers. The plot itself was just as bizarre. Participants in a wrestling tournament are being hunted by the sinister Anesthesia, who plans to use their DNA to create a new breed of super wrestlers. Yes, that's really the story. Despite its cringe-worthy voice acting and ridiculous plot, Rumble Roses impressed with its visuals and utilized the same gameplay engine developed by Ukes for SmackDown. Here comes the pain. Even with its over-the-top, fetishistic themes, the game was successful enough to spawn a sequel, Rumble Roses XX, in 2006.